Hello everyone, my name is Lily and this is my Differentiating Truth from Fiction Within the Legal System video presentation where I will be analyzing two different misconceptions within forensic psychology. The two different misconceptions that I will be focusing on in this presentation are the misconception that criminal profiling to identify suspects is a highly accurate practice within law enforcement and can always be useful in leading investigators to the perpetrator of a crime, and the misconception that all types of forensic and trace evidence are entirely accurate, reliable, and of scientific validity. We will be breaking down these two misconceptions, how they are viewed through forensic psychology, the truth behind these misconceptions, and how we can reduce these misconceptions in society and the legal system. One extremely common misconception within the field of forensic psychology is that criminal profiling as a practice within law enforcement is a highly accurate science and will always or even often lead the investigation to the perpetrator of the crime they are profiling. Starting off with the definition of criminal profiling describes the process of analyzing available information on a given crime to infer characteristics of the unknown offenders. The resulting profile typically involves information about the offender's physical characteristics, cognitive processes, social status, and behavior while committing the crime. And that is from Grigwe and Kenosha, 2021. I also included an example on the side of characteristics a criminal profiler might contain. One reason that there are so many misconceptions about criminal profiling is the way that the media portrays criminal profilers in books, TV, and movies. The accuracy and reliability of criminal profiling is often exaggerated in these media depictions, leading people to overestimate its usefulness, and, quote, although the profiling of serial killers has captured the imaginations of Hollywood and the general public, it remains a largely unvalidated technique, and the process requires a series of inferential leaps. That quote's from Costanzo and Krauss, 2021. The accuracy of a criminal profile is also dependent upon the abilities of the criminal profiler examining each different case, creating criminal profiles based on a crime scene in order to determine characteristics of the perpetrator can be misleading to investigators, as studies of criminals who have committed crimes of similar profiles showed that, quote, there was no discernible demographic resemblance between criminals who committed very similar crimes. That's also from Costanzo and Krauss, 2021. Regardless of the inferences made based on the abilities of the criminal profiler, there seems to be little basis to support that demographic information can be determined from a crime scene or criminal profile. This is also true of making inferences about the personality of a perpetrator, as, quote, particular crime scene characteristics do not appear to be reliably associated with particular criminal personality types. The data simply does not allow us to conclude that if a crime scene has a particular characteristic, the perpetrator must therefore be a particular type of person. It's also from Costanzo and Krauss, 2021. Within the fields of forensic psychology and science, a lot of articles available are more anecdotal than informative, as, quote, a review of the research highlighted this point. Only 27% of published articles on profiling described research studies, and only 5% of articles focused on theoretical issues. The remaining articles were discussions of profiling, informal summaries of the literature, or descriptions of how a single profile was developed and used in an individual case. That's from Costanzo and Krauss, 2021. Misconception about the validity of criminal profiling can cause real harm within the criminal justice system, as, quote, the disparity between the ongoing use of criminal profiling and the lack of empirical evidence for its validity is referred to as criminal profiling illusion, and associated risks for society range from misled police investigations, hindered apprehension of the actual offenders, and wrongful conviction to mistrust in the police. And that's from Gerway and Kenosha, 2021. A criminal profile can sway the perspectives of law enforcement, juries, and the entire direction of a criminal investigation. In order to account for some of the inaccuracies that are a part of the criminal profiling process and to, quote, enhance the validity of criminal profiling, the development of a checklist with variables based on theories and models adapted to specific types of violent crime is proposed, and this should facilitate the assessments of different types of validity and contribute to a more rigorous methodology of criminal profiling. That's from Rubiero and Suero, 2021. In order to increase the validity of criminal profiles, a more uniform way of creating these profiles is required for consistency. The second misconception that I selected is that all types of forensic and trace evidence are accurate and reliable. Although some types of forensic and trace evidence can be highly accurate and reliable, such as DNA and fingerprint analysis, other types of forensic evidence are much less accurate, such as matching bullets, analysis of tool markings, bite analysis, and hair comparison analysis. I put definitions for all of those different types of analyses as well as trace evidence on the slide in case you were confused on any of those. And analysis of bullet striation marks, tool analysis, and hair comparison analysis is often regarded as being just as reliable as other forensic evidence like fingerprints or DNA analysis when it is presented in court to a jury. The course textbook, Forensic and Legal Psychology, maintains that due to high levels of error, bite mark and tool mark evidence should not be allowed or admitted as evidence into the courtroom. People also regard forensic scientists as much more accurate and reliable in their testimonies, even though, quote, most practitioners of forensic science have no extended training, more than 90% hold only a bachelor's degree, and without elaborate graduate training, forensic examiners are more likely to let non-scientific values, such as pleasing one's superiors, take priority over scientific integrity. That's from Costanzo and Krauss, 2021. There are many more issues with trace and forensic evidence than the legal system tends to overlook, and jurors often do know, including the fact that, quote, weak scientific foundation for many forms of identification evidence, risk of contamination or misinterpretation of the trace evidence, and how the strength of a, quote, match or near match is communicated to a jury or judge. That's from Costanzo and Krauss, 2021. Certain types of forensic evidence, such as DNA and fingerprint analysis, are much more reliable, but it is important to make a distinction between the accuracy of different forms of trace evidence. Juries can be very much influenced by expert testimonies about forensic and trace evidence, as a study of jurors from Maine revealed that, quote, some jurors appeared to believe that credibility automatically applied to any expert accepted by the judge, despite the fact that, quote, for many professions in Maine and across the United States, licenses and certifications are necessary to perform business. Examples include hairdressers, barbers, tax accountants, nurses, and doctors. This is not the case currently for forensic scientists. That's from McCarthy, Wilcox, and McDaid from 2018. The determination made in cases of tool mark, bite mark, bullet, and hair analysis tends to be more subjective and relevant to the forensic scientist analyzing the evidence, and, quote, whether the forensic application is for evidentiary or intelligence purposes, forensic science must be objective, and the development of objective methods should continue despite no consensus among if forensic methods are mostly subjective or objective. DNA analysis is arguably the most objective, and to a much lesser extent, subjective methodologies utilize interpretation and judgments and should be endorsed. And that quote is from Early et al., 2021. In order to endorse these other kinds of more subjective methodologies, one way to prevent errors within these more subjective methods is to have the sample analyzed by multiple forensic scientists in order to eliminate subjectivity. In conclusion, it is important that the public, the people put on trial for crimes, and the people who serve as members of a jury have an informed perspective on areas of forensic psychology like criminal profiling and trace evidence in order to ensure the integrity of the criminal justice system. Media tends to depict both criminal profiling and all forms of trace evidence as exact science when this goes against the data supporting the accuracy and reliability of profiling and some types of trace evidence. Although criminal profiling can be potentially useful in the context of law enforcement investigations, in order to reduce error, there should be much more consistent criteria used to create criminal profiles. The accuracy and validity of different types of trace evidence can vary, with DNA and evidence and fingerprint analysis being the most accurate types of forensic evidence, while other types like bullet analysis, tool mark analysis, hair comparison analysis, and bite mark analysis are all considered to have less scientific validity. When types of forensic or trace evidence are used, it should not be on the duty of the jury to decide the validity of the science that was used. Rather, only the validated types of trace evidence should be presented in court as facts by an expert witness. Here are my sources. Thank you for listening.